RPN, Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, DXKO. 13.68 sa dial sa inyong radyo. RPN DXKO, ang Radyo Ronda, dili sa Dakbayan sa Cagayan de Oro. Sibiyahan na may galaong sa katawan, andam mo serbisyo sa tanan. Ang RPN DXKO Radyo Ronda, sakop sa KBP, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
In the race. Late filers face a fine between 6,000 to 10,000 pesos, and those who fail to file expense reports in 2 elections will be perpetually banned from public office. Back to you, Maya.
Melissa, you mentioned the SOSE is required for elected officers. Now, what happens if winning candidates did not file their SOSE by today?
That's right. So if they do not file anytime between now and June 30, they cannot assume office. However, they will be given a chance. They have until mid-November, or that's 6 months since they were proclaimed, to submit their SOSE, but of course with a corresponding penalty. And if they don't, and if they still are unable to comply by then, their posts will actually be declared vacant. Mai?
Thanks, Melissa Lopez there reporting. President-elect Bongbong Marcos will attend the face-to-face Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or Apec Summit in Thailand on November 18 to 19. This is the first time the summit will be held in person after it was canceled in 2020 and 2021 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The summit's main purpose is to promote sustainable economic growth, trade and investment, and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific region. This year's edition will focus on the importance of resuming safe and convenient cross-border travel. The organizers believe that it will hasten the region's speedy economic recovery from the crisis brought by the pandemic. The Thai government sent its invitation during the courtesy call of ASEAN ambassadors to Marcos last Monday. Incoming cabinet officials already buckling down to work less than a month before assuming office. In a Facebook post, incoming Migrant Workers Secretary Susan Oples says she met with the next Information and Technology Chief, Ivan Uy. Oples says they discussed, quote, possible digital solutions to cut red tape, to be competitive overseas, and to ease the burden on overseas Filipino workers, to which Uy said were, quote, doable. While the appointee for the Health Department has yet to be named, outgoing Secretary Francisco Duque says there are already candidates for the post. He says they are all qualified and have a proven track record in public service.
I have been hearing names, no, of the potential Secretary of Health. They're all good. I know all of them. I think they're all qualified. They've had quite a track record of public service, but I will not tell you or disclose to you who they are. DOH is very much ready to present the transition plan.
Duque says he will go back to Dagupan City after his term to teach in their family-owned Lyceum Northwestern University. But in case he gets charged over the procurement of pandemic supplies from the controversial Pharmaly Pharmaceuticals Corporation, Duque has this to say.
I always have good lawyers and many advisors, well-meaning advisors who know the travails, no, that I had to go through while helping and leading the country in this historic pandemic. Yung mga tao, dahil kakulangan na, yung little knowledge can be dangerous. Yun yung mga ibang pinapakita ng mga tao. They become all experts, they all become self-anointed, opinionated individuals, no? And also because of out of extreme fear, hindi na nakakaisip ng tama, hindi na alam kung ano yung logic, ano yung Yeah? Kaya tayo, science-based tayo.
Duque is confident President Duterte will continue to stand by him, adding that the president has his full trust and confidence. Outgoing Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon earlier advised Duque to hire a good lawyer, alleging he had a hand in what he says was the mishandling of pandemic funds. Meanwhile, Duque admits it would be difficult to reach the government's target of vaccinating 77 million individuals against COVID-19 before President Duterte steps down. The government would need to inoculate 3 million more people with a little over 3 weeks to go. Currently, the number of fully vaccinated individuals is at 69.5 million.
Mahirapan given the numbers now, no? Parang mga 300,000 lang a week for the primary dose. And for the second dose, even lower weekly vaccination rate, no? So, kailangan na lang ipagpatuloy talaga ng susunod na administrasyon to further ramp it up and achieve 100% of the 77 million target.
Duque is also asking the incoming administration to institutionalize the COVID-19 alert level system amid some calls to do away with it.
If they want to expand the alert leveling system to 0, they can do that, but there has to be a clear basis, no? But this I can tell you, ALS, the alert leveling system, is a very good practice. Hopefully, it will become a best practice that the next administration will continue. Rather than dumping it, no, or trashing it, they should institutionalize it.
Over 2 years of battling the pandemic, Duque says the virus has been somewhat contained, but he adds the public should still temper expectations. More developments in the Mandaluyong hit-and-run case. Authorities are now going after security guards of the subdivision where the SUV owner lives. Chrissy De Matulak reports.
Subdivision security guards are now facing a complaint after the police failed to speak with the owner of the SUV that ran over Christian Floralde. The Mandaluyong police slapped security personnel with obstruction of justice for not cooperating with their investigation.
Kung may ganun tayong mga activities of police follow-up, ibig sabihin that is to serve justice for the victim. So kung tayo pinagbawal po, yun ang magiging sinasabi natin na obstruction of justice because the justice has not been served.
Authorities identified the owner of the white SUV as Jose San Vicente. According to their initial assessment, it's possible that the address used in the vehicle's registration was that of the owner's father.
Itong si Joel, ang pagkaalam namin, Joel San Vicente is the father of the owner of this vehicle. So, yung owner of the vehicle is Jose Antonio San Vicente. And the father is Joel San Vicente, who is, according to the security guards, siya po yung nakatira dito sa given address doon sa subdivision. Si Joel San Vicente.
Jose San Vicente was expected to appear before the Intelligence and Investigation Division of LTO on Tuesday to explain his side of the incident, but he did not show up. The agency then issued a second and final show cause order for the SUV owner to appear on Friday afternoon. San Vicente's driver's license will be revoked should he fail to show up again. The Mandaluyong police have already filed complaints of frustrated murder and abandonment of one's own victim before a court on Monday. It is now up to the fiscal's office to invite San Vicente for questioning. Chrissy De Matulak, CNN Philippines.
More news ahead. Transport regulators are studying an appeal of jeepney drivers amid soaring fuel prices. While the Health Secretary says President Duterte is unlikely to sign the vape regulation bill into law. Details next on Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Land Bank has always believed that in this country, we have to dream big. And so we learned to build something out of nothing, improving the quality of life for our people, so that we can keep in step with the brave new world.
Welcome back to Newsnight. A decision on the proposed 1 peso hike in jeepney fares is set to come out this week. Transport regulators say they are looking into the appeal of drivers amid soaring fuel prices. The LTFRB hit the red light on the petition of jeepneys for a provisional fare increase in March.
Rest assured po natin yung mga operators po natin na tinitingnan ng maigi ng board po natin yung mga nangyayari on the ground. The board is seriously considering all sides po, no? The effect dun sa drivers and the operators on the one hand, and then doon sa mga commuters naman. Kasi we have to have a balancing of interest also.
The first tranche of the 6,500 peso aid for drivers is on track for completion this week after delays caused by fuel card issues and the election season. The LTFRB says the second batch may begin by end June or next month. Transport groups, however, are renewing calls to suspend the fuel excise tax. One of them, Manibela, slams the government for its fuel subsidy program, which it says is not enough to cushion the impact of the crisis.
Hindi naman namin hinihingi 100% na pansamantalang itigil nila. Kahit 50% doon sa excise tax, bahat magbebenepisyo po itong nasa transport sector, siguro po pag-aralan nilang mabuti.
May mga tumigil pero alternate po yung pagbiyahe. Kung halimbawa may 20 unit doon sa isang ruta, 10 ngayong araw, 10 naman yung susunod na araw para po may kitain. Pagka may dumaang libre sakay bababa, doon po sila lilipat. So pinapatay po yung aming hanap buhay.
Finance Chief Designate Benjamin Jokno earlier said the incoming administration is not keen on suspending fuel excise taxes, but lawmakers are finding ways to support transportation workers. Senator Risa Ontiveros says she wants to expand the service contracting program to include more drivers and operators, while Senator Win Gatchalian urges the government to look for other oil sources instead of relying on imports. Good news for job seekers. The Department of Labor is marking Independence Day this weekend with a job fair. More than 100,000 local and overseas jobs are up for grabs, whether in manufacturing, IT and BPO, logistics, and construction, among others. The job fair will be held in 23 sites across the country. The Trade and Industry Department is also holding a virtual career fair in partnership with JobStreet this June 13 to 17. For more details, catch JobStreet Philippines Country Manager Philip Quioca on The Final Word tonight at 9 here on CNN Philippines. Residents are slowly picking up the pieces after Mount Bulusan left several communities covered in ash in Sorsogon. Even with a go signal from authorities, Stanley Gahete reports some evacuees are still afraid to go back home.
After 3 days of restlessness, Mount Bulusan appears to have calmed down. More than 100 families at an evacuation center have been allowed by authorities to return to their houses.
Sinisiguro natin ngayon na systematic yung kanilang pagpapauwi ng ating evacuees. Unang-una para sa kanilang seguridad at yung kanilang safety din pauwi.
The local DRRM says they initially worried about the health and safety of vulnerable residents, but the situation has improved.
Nung gabi po, medyo tumaas po tayo kasi gabi maraming nagrereklamo na hindi daw talaga nila kaya ang amoy ng asupre. Kaya kinuha natin sila nung gabing iyon.
Many, however, are still afraid to return home with their communities still covered in ash.
Ang bahay namin, pag nakita ko, napapaiyak ako. Kasi yung kusina namin, puno ng abo. Yung mga halaman ko, sir, ganyan na ho, yung mga dahon ng saging. Nakakaawa, sir.
Para sa akin talaga ayaw ko pa. Kaya lang wala tayong magagawa. Yun ang dineclare nila na uuwi na kami. Kasi nga ang iniisip ko ang asawa ko kasi mabaho pa talagang abo doon.
Meanwhile, the local social welfare department has provided returning residents 2 boxes of groceries per family.
Nung Monday po, nagbigay na po kami ng food packs. And ngayon po, utos po ng aming regional director na magbibigay po kami para po before mag-decamp po sila, may magagamit po sila pagdating po nila sa area.
Despite some resistance, residents were transported by government vehicles to Puting Sapa, one of the most affected communities. The local DSWD has started a food for work program to the unemployed, assigning them to help clean the ashfall.
Mahirap po maglinis kasi masyadong makapal yung alikabok. Masaya po kasi makakatanggap ako ng grocery at saka bigas siguro yun.
Para malinis po yung barangay, nagpapaano po kami na makapagtrabaho sila at the same time, bibigyan sila ng pagkain para pag uwi nila galing ng evacuation center, malinis na po yung barangay.
Residents are hoping that Mount Bulusan won't erupt again anytime soon.
Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Kung hindi kayo, wala pa kami dito. Salamat po.
Stan Ligete, CNN Philippines.
A number of medical groups called on President Duterte to veto a measure lowering the age of access to e-cigarettes and vaping products from 21 to 18 years old. They warn this could lead to more Filipinos getting addicted to smoking. The health chief says it is unlikely the president will sign the bill into law, citing the harmful effects of e-cigarettes.
Unang-una, bago pa lang yan, technology na yan, no? Yung electronic nicotine device. There has also been a 2-fold increase in future tobacco use. So yung sinasabi na parang mag-reach is out of the tobacco, cigarette, traditional smoking, hindi totoo yun.
Many studies have shown that e-cigarette is a gateway to cigarette use in a year's time, as well as a gateway for alcohol and substance abuse. Once a young teen is addicted to nicotine, quitting is very hard. Safer is not equivalent to safe. It is not harm reduction, but a dangerous nicotine trap.
Congress ratified the vape regulation bill in January, but health advocates say it has yet to reach the president. Another threat for residents of the province of Batangas, local officials fear a possible rise of diseases from the high arsenic levels in their water. They're calling on the national government to help address the problem. George Cahiles with part 2 of his report.
Water coming from this pumping station in Barangay Sinisian East in Lemery, Batangas was found to contain dangerous levels of arsenic. The pumping station is being operated by a small barangay-based waterworks system.
Pagka kami nagpagawa po uli ng panibago pong source ng tubig po, siyempre po hindi po namin kaya po yun sa aming, katulad po ng aming asosasyon pong ito, hindi po namin kakayanin.
The high arsenic level was first observed after the explosion of Taal volcano in January 2020. With their meager resources, the waterworks system operator couldn't afford facilities that may help in lowering the arsenic level in water. It could not even pay for the monthly testing for arsenic and other dangerous chemicals.
Kami po ay nananawagan po sa ating pong national government na kung kami po ay matutulungan, yung katulad po namin ng barangay na kasali po kami sa positive ng arsenic, ang maibigyan po kami ng isa pong magandang pagdaloy ng tubig.
A few meters away from the water pump is a house of Mena de la Luna. While she doesn't use tap water for drinking and cooking, she still volunteered to be tested for traces of arsenic in her body.
Ever since nga, hindi mo ako umiinom ng tubig na galing sa ang consumption ko lang ng tubig is pagdilig, palaba, ganun lang. Wala pa naman resulta kaya nga kami nag-iintay pa rin.
Prime Water services around 13,000 households in Lemery, Batangas. In a statement, the company assures customers that the arsenic level in their water is lower than the limit and is safe for drinking and cooking. In Taal, Batangas, the local government announced that all samples from the Taal Water District, which supplies water to majority of residents, passed the test.
Merong 13 barangays na meron silang water system na sarili. Tinetest din natin yon. Kung talaga magkakaroon ng matindihang problema, mapoprocure kami or hihingi kami ng aid from the national government para magkaroon tayong tinatawag na, kasi naalis siya sa reverse osmosis.
The local government says it is still closely monitoring the situation to ensure that their residents are getting clean and safe water. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
In other news, the Justice Department is set to release a resolution on the Pastillas bribery scheme involving immigration personnel. Justice Secretary Bernardo Guevara says they conducted a parallel administrative investigation. Guevara, however, clarifies the respondents are different from the NBI's list submitted to the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman held at least 40 individuals criminally liable for allegedly allowing the entry of Chinese nationals into the country without going through the regular and stringent screening process. Guevara said the administrative case will determine the disciplinary action against the immigration officers. Former Deputy Commissioner Mark Red Marinas, the alleged mastermind of the scam, resigned in 2019. Still ahead, the sequel to Oscar-winning film Joker is officially on the way. Plus, a BTS member makes history joining the lineup of a famous music festival. That and more when we return on Newsnight. watching CNN Philippines. The origin story of Batman's most popular nemesis is getting a part 2, with the director of Joker confirming a sequel. Todd Phillips posted a photo with the movie's working title, Joker Folie deux, which means Joker Madness for 2 in French. Actor Joaquin Phoenix is set to reprise the lead role as he was seen reading the script in Phillips' post. Heads up, BTS Army's J-Hope, rapper of the Grammy-nominated group, is performing at one of the biggest music events in the U.S., Lollapalooza. This makes him the first South Korean artist to headline a main stage at a major music festival in the country. J-Hope's set is scheduled on July 31st, the last day of the Chicago event. There is more yet to come for BTS fans. The K-pop sensation released a preview of the music video for the lead single off their next album, Proof. Here's a look at the teaser for yet to come, The Most Beautiful Moment, dropping this Friday, June 10th. The anthology album Proof also comes out this Friday. Callum Scott's heartfelt ballads will be heard on the Manila concert stage again soon. The English singer's Bridges Asia Tour is coming to the New Frontier Theater in Cubao, Quezon City on October 20th. Ticket selling opens on June 15th. Scott is known for hits like You Are the Reason and his cover of Robin's Dancing on My Own. And that's it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Maya Rodriguez sitting in for Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, DXKO. 13:68 sa dial sa inyong radyo. RPN DXKO, ang Radyo Ronda dili sa Dakbayan sa Cagayan de Oro. Sibiyahan na may galaon sa katawhan, andang serbisyo sa tanan. Ang RPN DXKO Radyo Ronda sakop sa KBP, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
The World Health Organization reports that over 1 billion people around the world experience some form of disability, which greatly impacts their quality of life. But in the past few years, we've made many advances in assistive technology that can enhance their daily lives. This includes items, equipments, or even software programs that allow persons with disabilities to function independently. On the program today, we'll talk about the common disabilities here in the Philippines and the assistive technologies available that can help and empower these individuals. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Our guests are here today to tell us what they are and where we can acquire them. With us is Dr. Josephine Bundo. She is a rehabilitation medicine specialist from Physicians for Peace and the head of Physical and Rehabilitation Department from the UERM Medical Center. Also with us is Dr. Norberto Martinez. He is an ENT head and neck surgeon from the University of Santo Tomas Hospital. We mentioned that assistive technologies are products that help persons with disabilities function independently. Doc Penny, tell us more about this, and can you give us some examples nitong assistive technologies?
Assistive technology is not only for disability, actually it can also prevent disability. As long as you have an impairment or a problem in body function or structure, you can already have some form of assistive technology. This very eyeglasses that I am wearing is already assistive technology. So it is actually something that we use every day, but we do not know that it's called assistive technology. Anything that will help us have a better or functional life.
The World Health Organization reports that only 1 in 10 people in need have access to these products. And since the onset of the pandemic, people from countries like the Philippines have even less access to assistive technology or only have access to poor quality product. Dr. Bundok, why is assistive technology so scarce here? And how did the pandemic further impact access to it?
Even in the absence of pandemic, there are 5 factors which hamper access to assistive technology. 1 is cost. 2 is data. We do not actually know how many need it. 3rd is our topography. We are more than 7,100 islands and it's quite difficult to reach. 4th is we lack the professionals who are capable of implementing or developing the assistive technology, tools, supplies, and program. And last but not the least is we don't have local products. Everything is imported. So with the pandemic, aside from the fact that physical distance is a factor or a challenge in access, the pandemic added the factor of social distancing. So the more that the access to assistive technology has become scarce.
Now let's talk about one of the most common disabilities here in the Philippines, and that is vision impairment. Millions of Filipinos suffer from this and many go undiagnosed. But actually, people with these problems can correct them for the most part by using eyeglasses. So what are some of the conditions that eyeglasses can help with?
Very obviously and most common is the error of refraction, but we also have astigmatism. We also have what we call a double vision. Or in children with cerebral palsy, for example, they have difficulty in controlling the eye movement. So these are some of the more common reasons why eyeglasses are prescribed.
So an optometrist or an ophthalmologist usually performs an eye exam to determine what type of eyeglasses work best for you. But unfortunately, many Filipinos don't have access to this, especially in distant provinces. So my question again for you, Dr. Penny, is it best to acquire glasses from an eye clinic, or can Filipinos get quality eyeglasses even from places like the mall?
Definitely, you go for quality eyeglasses. In fact, it is the program of the Department of Health to do early newborn screening so that they could be properly advised from the very beginning. Having it in the mall would be good, but if and only if there is also an ophthalmologist working with an optometrist who will be able to prescribe the proper type of eyeglasses that is needed. We should exercise caution because there are a lot of eyeglasses which are being sold without any prescription, and this will do more harm than good.
Now, from vision, let's talk about hearing naman. So because hearing loss, for the most part, affects the elderly, but many people who work in loud environments like construction places or factories may experience it as well. It also affects younger people due to prolonged use of earphones when listening to music, watching TV, and now attending online classes as well as meetings. Dr. Martinez, please explain to us the difference between noise-induced hearing loss and age-related hearing loss. What are some of its distinct symptoms?
When we talk about age-related hearing loss, it's hearing loss, it actually starts as early as when you are reaching the age of 50. But most of the data would say that the definition of age-related hearing loss is hearing loss that occurs from 60 and above. No, if you look at the global data, they say about 1/3 of people whose age is 75 and above will have some degree of hearing loss, which is age-related. That's part of the wear and tear of the organ. No, when we talk about noise-induced hearing loss, so that can actually occur at any age, for as long as you are exposed to noise, which is detrimental to your hearing, that can damage the inner ear, the hair cells of your cochlea, then that is noise-induced hearing loss. In fact, through a hearing test, you can differentiate the two.
Now, Dr. Martinez, let's talk about hearing aids, because the use of hearing aids can help people with noise-induced or age-related hearing loss lessen that experience. They work by amplifying sounds, but it's more than just a microphone and speaker. It helps with specific frequencies. That's why, Dr. Martinez, what are some of the steps that Filipinos can take to obtain a hearing aid after, of course, being properly diagnosed? And how does one know which type works best?
You have to have a hearing test. So we know the pattern of your hearing loss. We know if it is, say, for example, conductive hearing loss that may affect the canal of the ear or even the middle ear, which can be remedied medically or even surgically. No? If it is something that is irreversible, then we consider hearing aids. And again, that will rely on your hearing test.
Apart from hearing and vision impairments, many Filipinos deal with mobility issues. Now, what are the assistive technologies that can help them move around and enjoy their independence? We'll answer that after the break. We're your partner in healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Today, we shed light on assistive technologies available that can significantly improve the lives of persons with disabilities. Let's talk about technologies available for mobility. Many Filipinos, both old and young, endure fractures, injuries, and health conditions that may lead to amputation or even loss of limb function. On the other hand, some are born with disabilities that may prevent them from walking properly or walking altogether. Doc Penny, what are some of the technologies that are available in the Philippines that will address mobility, and how do they work?
So actually, there are a lot of assistive technology for mobility. And you could have this talking phones or self-directed devices which have sensors that would assist for mobility and orienteering. And then we have the basic canes, crutches, walkers, for those who have still some level of function with their legs, no? And we go down to the level of your wheelchairs. The wheelchairs could be basic for those who just have orthopedic problems, or it could be supportive for those who have stroke or with neuromuscular disorders. And for people who are really paralyzed from the neck down, or would have some difficulty in control of the wheelchair, then we also have what we call our motorized wheelchairs. So these are the most common assistive technology for mobility for people who have intact limbs. For those who have a limb which is absent, whether it's in the upper or lower extremity, we have what we call the prosthesis or the artificial limbs. So by far, those are the common assistive technology for people with mobility disability.
Dr. Penny, let's talk a little bit about canes and crutches, because this is very common, especially habang tumatanda or even if they have a disability. Could you tell us what exactly are they for, and how important is it that someone gets the proper equipment for this?
So everything should be customized. So we just don't buy over the counter the cane or the crutch. People might be skeptical, but we actually measure the length of the cane, and then we fit it to the one who would use it. There's a certain degree or angle of the elbow that is required, and a certain distance from the foot that is required also when you are walking with the crutch or the cane. So it is very essential and very important for safety and functionality that we are able to measure and customize the cane or the crutch for the one who will use it.
Now, Dr. Penny, you mentioned about prosthetic limbs. There's a lot of mystery about this, because a lot of people, the first thing they will think about when it comes to prosthesis is this is very expensive. How important is having a prosthetic limb, either for the leg or for the arm? How can Filipinos be qualified for a prosthetic limb if they indeed need one?
There are two purposes for your prosthetic limb. That is for prosthesis, and more importantly, body image completion. particularly for the upper limb because it's exposed. No, it's a part of the body which is readily seen. For the lower extremities, the artificial limb or the prosthesis is more essential for walking. So these are the two main goals while we use a prosthesis. As for affordability, because of the establishment of the Philippine School of Prosthetics and Orthotics, and because of the PhilHealth packages for all types of prosthesis and orthosis, the prosthesis now for upper and lower limbs have become accessible and also affordable. So what is essential right now is just for people to be more aware of the services that are available and where they would go to in order to avail of this prosthesis.
The area in our body which produces the voice, the larynx, or commonly known as the voice box, dito nanggagaling ang boses ng isang tao. But because of maybe disease, malignancy, or maybe trauma, this could be injured and the person loses the ability to produce sound or have a voice. Are there options as well, Dr. Martinez, for those who have lost their voice?
They have a way of, a technique of allowing the muscles of the neck to vibrate, the muscles of the esophagus to move, so they produce voice, no? At the same time, you can actually use a gadget, no? There is what you call an electrolytic, so it's a gadget that you put on the neck, so it will enhance the vibration and you produce a more reasonable type of voice, no? Now, during the surgery, you can create a connection between the windpipe and into the esophagus using a prosthesis also. So with that, we call that the Blom-Singer prosthesis. We don't really have to use any gadget anymore because the air will be diverted from the windpipe into that hole. It's connected to the esophagus, and then you can produce good voice also. So there are certain surgical procedures that will actually create that also, no?
Now, a common disability all over the world includes heart problems. In fact, heart disease is the leading cause of death. Now, your doctor might prescribe a pacemaker for those with certain heart conditions. Dr. Penny, let's talk about pacemakers. Maraming sa ating mga viewers ang nakarinig nito, but when is this recommended?
Basically, the pacemaker makes sure that the heartbeat is good enough that would allow the recipient to be functional for all his activities of daily living. However, I know that there are certain precautions or risks that are associated with the use of the pacemaker, and it would really be best that a proper evaluation would be done by the cardiologist and the cardiovascular surgeon prior to undergoing the procedure.
Many people suffer from communication problems, but there are devices and apps that can help with speech as well as language. Now, what are these assistive technologies? More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on Med Talk Health Talk. We'll be right back. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to Med Talk Health Talk. Many people around the world suffer from some form of communication problem, but there are many devices available today to help these individuals communicate effectively. Dr. Penny, what are some of these technologies? And could you tell us a little bit about how they can help those who are visually impaired, hearing impaired, as well as voice impaired?
So in terms of communication for the visually impaired, we have the Braille. And then we also have applications in the cell phones wherein text could be converted to speech or speech can be converted into text. For our hearing impaired, we actually have the very basic sign language. But recently, they have developed a glove in which you would make motions and the sensors in the glove are able to convert it into speech or text also.
Now, one of the more common ways for the hearing impaired to communicate is through sign language, either those who are hearing impaired or vocally impaired. Dr. Martinez, let's talk about sign language for those who have lost their ability to hear or their ability to speak. Do we have our own version here in the Philippines? How can, are there areas where people can learn? sign language?
Yeah, we have the so-called Filipino sign language. No, this is something that was developed, and the proponents of this one are based at the institution in the University of the Philippines, the Filipino Sign Language, and the group also from St. Benilde actually were instrumental in coming up with this Filipino Sign Language. But for purposes of international communication, then the more common will be the American Sign Language.
Now, Dr. Martinez, in this day and age of gadgets, cell phones, smartphones, iPad, tablets, has the communication skills when it comes to those who are hearing impaired or even speech impaired, has it changed for the better? Is it easier now for people to communicate?
Gadgets have revolutionized communication. So for people, for example, instead of using sign language, basically they just text the message to another individual. So whether you are hearing impaired or not, then you can easily do that. As mentioned by Penny, when you try to communicate, the words that you say will be translated in real time into text. So a hearing impaired individual can benefit from that. So as I said, communication skills, and because of technology, that's drastically improved.
Every day we come up with new technologies to create an inclusive space for each person living with a disability. Dr. Penny, before we go, do you have any advice on how can we best enable the disabled?
What is very important is for people to understand that assistive technology does not ensure that you will be functional and be able to save it usefully. It is very important that with the crutches, the cane that are given to you, the prosthesis provided, and the wheelchairs, you should also undergo training in its use. Not only of the person who would use it, but also the family and the caregiver, because this would mean also aftercare, maintenance, and proper utilization of the assistive technology. So this is very essential. Assistive technology plus training and or rehabilitation.
And Dr. Martinez, before we go, do you have any advice for our viewers?
Hearing disability is an invisible disability, so we should not take it for granted. We should know how to deal with the hearing impaired, especially for elderly, because we have to realize that we will get there at some point in time. Okay, so gadgets are something that will help us, but we make sure that we be patient enough to benefit from these gadgets. And when it comes to noise-induced hearing loss, it is irreversible, but definitely preventable. So we know how to protect ourselves so that this will not reach to a point where we have difficulty communicating.
And with that, I'd like to thank Rehab Medicine Specialist Dr. Josephine Bundok and ENT Head and Neck Surgeon Dr. Norberto Martinez for sharing your insights with us today. We appreciate your time very much. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Thank you for watching Med Talk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.